Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening to this. So recently I started playing Call of Cthulhu, which came out on October 29th, which is the same day that I'm recording this. I had an experience with Final Fantasy VI that I really enjoyed the way in which that I documented my experience, and that it's been very simple. I just started a Google Doc, and every day that I played, I would, write that data at the top, and then basically just have bullet points of what transpired during that play session, right? And with that game specifically, and with Call of Cthulhu as well, other than just actions that characters take or that I'm taking, right, as well as how the plot is, progressing and whatnot, and what I'm feeling in certain moments and whatnot. It was also important to note the dialogue that was being said. And the entire reason that I did this was to basically drive a discussion with Randall, a friend of mine, who actually let me borrow his SNES and Final Fantasy VI, as it's one of his favorite games. And we had these like daily, if not, or weekly, if not daily updates about, my journey throughout the game. And it was great. It was a great way to incite discussion and, help remind him of his experiences and whatnot. And it was fantastic. And it's something that I want to try and do for a lot of games moving forward, especially those with a heavy emphasis on narrative and contextual play. And Call of Cthulhu definitely is going to be one of those games. So I went ahead and started my document as I started playing the game, and I wanted to go ahead and share that with everybody. Anyone that's willing to listen, that is. So let me pull it up real fast. Okay, awesome. So here we go. Call of Cthulhu, October 29th. What I really enjoyed immediately was that first shot of when everything's done loading, right? And you get that first big shot of Edward Pierce basically in a cave, coming out of a cave, and all you just see is ocean, clearly waves crashing, going crazy. A thunderstorm is happening above, and way out in the distance you see Cthulhu just fucking huge as shit. And I'm just thinking, like, man, what an epic yet terrifying shot to behold as the first, exposure to the game of Call of Cthulhu. I thought that was really, really awesome, and it gets me really excited to, see how this guy is going to basically manifest in the game. That was a really awesome shot to start out with. What I love this, is as I was navigating the menus, before I even started the game, I love how the letters on the menu changed to glyphs or some sort of indecipherable language. And I'm thinking, holy crap, I'm going mad before I even play the game, right? It was super awesome, and actually reminded me of Darkest Dungeon when you get to a certain part in that story, where in which occasionally when you're moving through menus, you will see, or moving through characters, I should say, like anything that has to involve a character, their individual, like, sort of icon or cutout or whatever you want to call it, where it's just like their profile shot or whatever, will change into like this abomination, right? And it's basically letting you know that you're starting to see the world for what it actually is. You've tore behind the veil. You tore the veil just a little bit, and you can peek through, and it'll stare right back at you and let you know this is actually how the world works, not what you used to think, not what you previously thought. So I really like that. I love that feeling, and I like how I'm already getting that before I even started playing the game. Let me get a quick sip of water. Those details like that I really appreciate in terms of really immersing me as a player and heightening up the narrative and contextual play of a video game. So we learn immediately that Edward Pierce is a World War I veteran, And of course, you learn more about Edward as you sort of dig through menus and whatnot. But this was just the very beginning of the game, and so yeah, you learn that he's a World War veteran who seemingly has an alcohol addiction or a problem, to put it bluntly. And he uses sleeping pills as they're necessary to help him deal with his stress and sort of ward off a really painful and really traumatic memories from the war, and that he needs a new case soon as he's a detective or a private investigator, whatever, or his license will be revoked. So he needs to get some work sooner rather than later, because who knows what is going to happen to him. We don't really know what sort of extends outside of the investigation agency. So he's looking for some damn work. And that's just like the, sort of like the loading screen text or whatever. But when we wake up, like when we start the game, when we actually get into gameplay, we wake up inside like a cave that's filled with all kinds of these fucking fish guts everywhere. I mean, everywhere. There's, shark heads, there's just intestines all over the place, blood all over the place, flies and shit. And, as you sort of progress throughout this cave, you notice that there are bowls on counters. So I thought, okay, like these inhabitants of this cave are eating the fish, seemingly. That's what I thought initially. And, just kind of taking in the surroundings, it's very foreign, it's very creepy, you have no idea what's going on, you have no idea what could possibly be around a corner at all. Had to get a sip of water. But you clearly are underground to some degree. You're surrounded by water, which is terrifying because you have no fucking idea what the hell is in the water, other than all these damn fish. There's something else there, right? You just know that there's something else there, and that is just it's very, very unsettling. So as you kind of progress, you come across like this this gate that's closed, and I was like, okay, damn, like I can't go through here, right? I'm just pulling on this chain. I need to find a way to get through. And I remember looking out through that, and I didn't see anything, of anything of interest really, in terms of like people or creatures or anything. What I noticed is that there's this sort of distortion that's kind of going across the rocks, and there's actually like a small wooden fence there for whatever reason. And it reminded me of like heat distortion that you would see, on a really, really hot day, like when you're driving. You see it in movies all the time. So I thought, okay, that's really odd. Like, is it heat? Are the fish guts giving off heat? Like, are they hot? I don't know. If not, what the fuck is causing this distortion? And that's very weird to me. Again, it's gonna play up the whole theme of you just can't explain things. So I continued down, and before that, sorry. As I open the door, or as I'm crouching, as I'm crouching to go through this section to get to the bolt cutters, I hear this voice that says, "In my wake, pulled along. Fate inescapably draws you on." And then I started to hear what sounded like a record player, but semi-distorted. And I thought, okay, that's very weird. This place does not seem like it would have any electricity, one, and two, I doubt any of the inhabitants in this cave would get down with a record player. So then that's when I thought, okay, I could possibly be dreaming, and that record player could be in the waking world or whatever you want to call it. Basically, wherever the hell Edward Pierce is actually wherever he actually fell asleep, there's probably a record player playing, and that's what we're hearing. But that's also like crazy to think that you're in a dream, and you're navigating through this dream that feels so real, yet you can still hear something from the waking world. I say waking world because I love Bloodborne, and that's used all the time. But you can hear sounds from reality while you're in the dream. It's kind of like, it makes you scratch your head, and I'm going to probably be saying that for multiple episodes. Yeah, so I got the bolt cutters, and I went down to like the edge of like the dock just to kind of look in the water, and like after about like 15 seconds I kind of got a chill down my spine, and I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and head back. So like, this is kind of creepy. So I go back, and I unlock the door with the bolt cutters, and initially I thought, wait, there's two doors that have chains that need bolt cutters to be cut. And then I was like, but wait, I went to the left and I only saw one door, so where did the other door go? Right? I was tripping, right? I was psyching myself out, but it turns out, they're both there. It's not like I turned the corner and like half of the fucking world, disappeared or whatever. So I was all good. I was freaking out slightly though, not gonna lie. Yeah, so I started moseying my way down on critical path, and I get into this kind of larger open area with just a shit ton of fish guts, like more so than what I had previously encountered, right? And I also picked up the lantern, as you have to do that. Speaking of which, interestingly enough, the crates that were in the level had some sort of like symbol on them, like a packaging symbol, almost like a company, right? It didn't look foreign. It didn't look, indecipherable or out of this world kind of thing. It looked like this could possibly be a logo for a company. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And, I'm kind of taking a look at the fish guts as I'm like slowly walking towards this, the steps that are leading me up, and you hear what a putrid offering. And I remember when I was playing that scared the hell out of me because I wasn't expecting that. And so then I thought to myself, okay, so this is an offering, but there's also bowls in other rooms that are next to fish guts and like fish heads and shit like that. So I thought, okay, so maybe what isn't offered is eaten, perhaps? Because clearly the initial room that you wake up in this sort of, dream sequence is just nothing but just fish guts and fish bodies and corpses and whatnot. And I think there's a distinction there between offering and, I guess, personal usage or whatever, like consumption of food and whatnot. So I thought that was an interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? Interesting distinction to make between fish corpses as offerings versus fish corpses used for consumption or something else. Because I don't think you would just have a bowl there for no reason. You know what I mean? Another quick drink of water. So yeah, I kind of thought like whatever isn't offered is then eaten. And then this was the part that really scared me shitless. I didn't notice it at first until I actually recorded I saved out a clip and then went back and watched it and realized, holy shit, this thing was there the whole time. But as I was kind of walking around, I'm just kind of checking out the environment, and I look up at the cave, at the top of the cave, and I can see this big old hole that's kind of there, and there's some light coming down. I'm like, okay, that's so we're clearly underground. We still got a ways up to go to the surface, and as I'm looking down, just this huge sound comes out of nowhere, and I look and I just see this just ripples, just distortion in the water ripples, and something just swam away, and it was big. It was big, and right there I jumped and I just turned away, and I mean, I looked at the source of the sound and just slowly walked back, and I had to collect myself. I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." It made me really laugh because I was surprised that how startled I got, and then I went back and actually watched the clip and realized that that thing, whatever it was floating there the entire time. And it's one of those, like, when you see it, your shit bricks kind of thing. That really did freak me out. But that was awesome. And I'm thinking, like, who the fuck knows what that was? I don't know. Was that Cthulhu? Was that just a big ass fish? I don't know. It's awesome, but it's terrifying at the same time. Yeah, I was terrified. Continuing along, you hear the voice say again, don't fight, you have been chosen. And that's a very important line, as I think there is a connection that I'll bring up a little bit later on. So I go through the door, and the voice comes on again and says, "Behold, everything has already been written, but perhaps you will attempt to change your destiny." And this weird cutscene of these, like, same looking guys, same exact faces, except the one dude in the very back. The same faces because they basically have no face. And so there's 4 hooded men and 1 police officer, seemingly. And it looked like a ritual was being performed, it seemed like, and the officer was attempting to kill them or whatever. And I thought when I was looking at the hooded figure that it could potentially be Edward Pierce. And it kind of struck me when, the disembodied voice says, behold, everything has already been written. And so immediately I was thinking of 2 different options or possibilities. One, the events that are going to take place are, written in the stars or whatever, right? Like, you can't stop Cthulhu, arising or whatever. Like, you can't fight against what is, predestined, essentially. That is destined to happen, right? And those both kind of match up, in that the 2 different ideas, 2 different interpretations of that sentence, which are, will you attempt to change your destiny, as in, like, the fate of the world kind of thing, or that hooded figure is Edward Pierce and he is destined to be a servant or whatever, but he's going to fight against that anyways. So the way I interpreted that essentially was, everything is already written, everything has already been written. I took that as either the events that are going to transpire have already been written, like the end of the world or whatever, or Edward's fate specifically has already been written, and whether or not he's going to try and change that. That's how I interpreted it. Let's see. Yeah, the hooded figure just fucking walks up and murders that dude, and reaches out for Edward, but then he wakes up. He wakes up in our office, and then I immediately recognize that goddamn record player from the dream. So I was like, okay, so I was hearing that while I was dreaming. Exploring around the office, we find Edward's sleeping pills, which Edward even questioned why he continued to take them, as it seemingly they're not working anymore, which the item description states, the doctors prescribed them when I returned from the war. They swore that they would put out, or they would, I guess autocorrect must have messed up my sentence, but essentially they would get rid of his nightmares, but for a while now their effect has been wearing off. Also walking around, you find that Pierce has a journal of sorts that he keeps, but recently he's only written about his nightmares. And to me, what's starting to make sense is the declaration that he has been chosen. So if the sleeping pills have worn off, their effect is worn off, which they are designed to basically make him not have nightmares, right? And his nightmares shifted for quite some time, assumedly, from nightmares of the war to nightmares of, this weird Dreamlands fucking sequence that he's having, and this call that he is feeling, which he does mention, which I think I wrote down a little bit later. Compile that with the fact that his sleeping pills are not working. He's constantly having nightmares, assumedly about this Dreamlands type of sequence that he continues to have. I think it makes sense why he feels, or he's being told that he's being chosen. Right, so essentially, yeah. He's having nightmares more frequently. The sleeping pills are not working. This is, again, my assumption, is that he's having more nightmares about this weird Dreamland sequence, and it's happening more often because he recently has been chosen for whatever reason. And again, that kind of plays into the behold, everything has already been written type of thing. So yeah, moving on from that, I initially wanted to go, in terms of specking out Edward Pierce, I initially wanted to go investigation and medical, but there's just so many options, right? And I'm getting excited because hopefully there'll be, a lot of replayability with this game. And I actually remember the investigation being called professionalism, if I'm not mistaken, in an older build. So I was very used to calling it that, but I ended up speccing my points into level 1 occultism, medical, and spot hidden. So hopefully that makes for some interesting gameplay. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, there's so many options. There's investigation, medical, spot hidden, eloquence, strength, occultism, and psychology. And all of those just seem to, benefit the player in more than one way, in some way, and it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So inventory and knowledge are basically a model viewer, which I think is pretty cool, like a 3D model viewer. So I'm really hoping that as the game progresses, that spot hidden comes into play here, right? Like there is a clue on a item that the game doesn't tell you about, right? And like your heads-up display that is there that can help you, but you have to actively go seek that out and read something or turn it around and notice something that's going to be godlike if it happens. I really, really hope that that is the case. Let's see. I wrote down some descriptions here. The doctor can well repeat to me that I no longer need my remedy to keep my memories at bay. But I know that if I stop, the memories will return. One of these mornings, I probably won't wake up. So, what we learned pretty early on is that Edward Pierce has been through some shit, right? Which I'll kind of get to that in a little bit later, because I kind of broke down the last 3 parts of the tutorial into 3 sections. Yeah, and then right after that, it's what he says is, despite the treatment, I again hear voices in my dreams, but they are different, unknown. They seem to surface from unfathomable and ancient depths. What name was what? Oh God, autocorrect is killing me here. Basically, what was the creature that was calling me? And before we get into the case, I wanted to talk about, exploring the rest of the office, and there's just kind of just flavor quotes that tell you a little bit about the books in the office and whatnot. Talk to you about his 2 cases, one of which was closed, one of which was solved. You find a medical book in there that increases your progression, which was sick. I really like that. You also find a certificate of membership that tells us that Wentworth Agency doesn't really attract top-notch cases. So basically, he's kind of scraping at the bottom of the barrel type of thing, but it's work, and work puts food on the table and in your stomach, so he's just got to do what he's got to do. Exploring through the pause menu, I saw that there's essentially a sanity state which can be viewed and gives you a rundown of like your mental capabilities and your state of mind and how that sort of affects your judgment, your ability to use your critical thinking skills and whatnot. And I thought that was really awesome. And looking at that, Pierce has a seemingly long list of potential mental trauma that he can suffer from. And that is both equally curious. I'm both equally curious and terrified to learn about them, right? And nightmares is given to us by default. So nightmares is given to us by default, and I'm curious to see how certain decisions, key mark decisions, will inflict trauma or not as we continue to play. But going on about Pierce, there's actually a photograph of his Army days, which is the Lost Battalion. That's where he that's the battalion that he was a part of, right? And a quote that he says when you go to investigate the picture is, "The Lost Battalion, holding your position and obeying orders. That isn't courage." So we learned that he took part in the, and I'm gonna butcher this, but Mayu's Argonne offensive, and is one of the few surviving members of the Lost Battalion. The group of men suffered immense casualties from both ally and enemy artillery. They were forced to hold their position for several days, and they were surrounded by the bodies of their fallen comrades without food or medical supplies. The soldiers were considered as lost by their fellow countrymen. So essentially, him and his battalion were left for dead. And they were surrounded by dead and had no food and were starving to death probably, and had no medical supplies, so no way to actually treat themselves for the injuries that they sustained. So you can imagine that that was not a very good time in his life, not at all. And it's very clear when you, going back earlier, when you read, the doctor can well repeat me that I no longer need my remedy, blah, 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 blah. But if I stop taking these sleeping pills, then the memories will come back. And these memories, to me, are referencing the nightmares of the war, not of the, Dreamland sequence and shit like that. So then he says, one of these mornings, I probably won't wake up. So right there, we already know he has an alcohol addiction. He has more or less an addiction to sleeping pills. Like, it's necessary for him to, stave off nightmares. And to me, that's a hint of suicidal tendencies or suicidal thoughts of one day he's just not going to wake up, as in you have no idea if this guy is totally down or at least thought about killing himself in some regard, overdosing or whatever, right? And that is terrifying to me. Absolutely terrifying to me that my main character already has a damaged mental psyche and is about to go into madness when he's investigating this, this case. So, Pierce is in a very unfortunate predicament. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else in regards to that specifically? Other than that, and then also saying that he's having these dreams, and he feels like he's being called from some ancient depths that he just wants to know what the hell's going on and what creature is calling to him, right? And I just am like, holy God, this guy is going to get it really bad, unfortunately. But, this guy is, he's had a shitty life. Like, he's not had a good life. It's clearly not a happy character. And, he's been through a lot of shit. So, the hardest thing about writing notes and for this game so far is that dialogue is extremely important. But unlike Final Fantasy VI, which I did the same exact method of detailing my experiences, you can wait to advance dialogue, right? By pressing pressing A or whatever, and then read it, and then just wait. And then I was able to write it down, and then I can progress from there. Not so much in this game, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to remember everything and write down everything, but I'm going to try the best I can. So I didn't get to catch all the dialogue that was exchanged between Pierce and Mr. Webster, because there was a lot in regards to the case, but essentially, so far, all we know is that his daughter and her family died in a fire. The police chalk it up to a domestic accident, but continually cite Sarah Hawkins' state of mind. Why? We don't know that, and that's very curious, and that has, I was going to say Aiden, that has Edward feeling some type of way. He feels like there's something off there in regards to that. We know about a shipping label with the address of Warehouse 36 to Darkwater. Sarah was a painter, and her paintings depict her painting that Mr. Webster came in with depicted seemingly her and her son facing off against some tall bipedal creature of some kind with a symbol on his chest, assuming that it is a male or if it even has a gender in the first place. The dad does think that this is a message and it is linked to her death in some way. Charles Hawkins, the husband, was a ship owner and a celebrity on the island of Darkwater. He met Sarah on a business trip in Paris, I believe, fell in love, and they got married. Sarah was a famous painter known for her tortured artistic universes, and she was worshipped for her strange works and super rare public appearances. Pierce recalls that she once said, "I paint what my dreams whisper to me." So, here's what really puts a red flag, not necessarily a red flag, but a flag up. The word worshipped. She was worshipped for her strange works and super rare public appearances. That is a very peculiar word to use, in my opinion. To be worshipped for your strange and otherworldly paintings and public appearances. So when she was out in public, she would be flooded by people. But it's different to be around people and people appreciate you versus people worshiping you. That is very odd. And when she says, "I paint what my dreams whispered to me that signifies that she too was chosen. Much like Edward is chosen now, at some point in her life, she was chosen. And she was experiencing those dreamland sequences and whatnot. And that is why she got the source material, because she experienced it firsthand, essentially, and made those paintings. So to me, there's way more going on with her and the occult, obviously, than what we know so far. But I do think that she was, in fact, chosen as well. Yeah, so other than that about the case, that was the hardest part to, jot and write down, simply because there's just so much dialogue there. But thankfully there is basically paraphrases of what characters say in the menu and whatnot. So what do we know about Darkwater so far? We know that it's a small island off the coast of Boston that has been forgotten. Hell, even Edward Pierce didn't even know about it. Isolated and inhabited since the 14th century by tribes of whale hunters. It would seem that many traditions and beliefs have persisted through time, and the beliefs are mentioned as gods, plural, so not just one, which I thought was pretty interesting. And apparently a gigantic creature still ornates the walls of long abandoned caves, like the one in the dream that we had. A large creature that was floating in water that scared the hell out of me. Like, is that also a reference, or is that a reference to the creature that we saw? I don't know. Then continue on. Was it a dream or a sea god? The modern-day descendants still remember their island's mysterious story. Here's the weirdest part about that. This is coming from a book called Atlas of Atlantic Islands. So, to me, that is a historical book. That is a book that is meant to give a general description of the island, which it seemingly does, right? But why in that book does it ask the question, was it a dream or a sea god? In a scholastic book. That is very peculiar. That does not sit with me right. Let me get a quick drink. I'm not sure why a scholarly book, assumedly, maybe not necessarily a scholarly book, right? But something that is meant to be bought by the general public would ask a question like that. I think that there's more to that question, and now I'm interested in the creation of what the fuck was it called? Atlas of Atlantic Islands. That struck me as very peculiar. Again, the wording in this game is something to be mindful of. Yeah, I'm very curious to know why that such a question would be proposed in a book that is meant for general public consumption. Yeah, other than that, I probably am missing something in my mind, but I'm also very, very tired as I'm recording this. But I think that's pretty much going to do it for the first episode of this, of Call of Cthulhu, October 29th play session. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, audio, I guess. I hope that you will all enjoy Call of Cthulhu. I'm enjoying it so far. I am really looking forward to continue playing and just looking for a great ride. You know, a great ride, a great story, and I'm looking forward to playing through it again with a different specced out character, making different decisions. I'm happy that this actually didn't get to an hour. I was actually afraid that it would. But yeah, thank you all for listening. I really do appreciate it. This is very fun for me. I had a blast doing this with Final Fantasy VI and chatting with my friend Randall. And yeah, I'm going to try to do these as often as I can to talk about the game and just kind of document my experiences as I play. And hopefully people get enjoyment out of this and can relate in some regard, and and have similar experiences and whatnot, and we can chat about them. So thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed Call of Cthulhu, and take care. Oh, and happy Halloween.